What's up, church? How we doing today? Good. Hey, if you're new here, my name is Adam Lynch. I'm the lead pastor here at Crossroads. Super excited that you are with us today. Hey, after church, we have something called Next Steps. If you're here and you're wondering, hey, what's my next step at Crossroads? We have a class for you right after church. Me and another staff person will be in there leading that class, 30 minutes in and out, and hopefully it will help you get connected to our church. How many of you are ready to have church this morning? Raise your hand. You guys ready? I'm ready to preach, okay? This might go a long time. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to go a long time, but I'm feeling it this morning. Last night, as I was kind of going over, Saturday night, I try to always keep low-key. I'm trying to go over my notes. I'm trying to study. And as I was studying last night, I felt the Lord just kind of prompt me to share something that I didn't have in my notes. And so I want to talk about, just for a quick second, about Matthew chapter 7. Matthew chapters 5 through 7 is Jesus' most famous sermon. It's called the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus talks about so many different things in this sermon. It's his greatest sermon. He talks about the Beatitudes. He talks about loving your enemy. He talks about all these amazing things. And then he concludes this greatest sermon that's ever been preached. He concludes it with talking about two different guys who built their houses on a rock, and the other person built their house on the sand. One person built it on a rock, and the other person built it on sand. So the person who built the house on the sand, many of you know how the story goes. The person built the house on the sand, and the wind came, the winds blew, the storm came, and the house crumbled. It crumbled underneath all of the storms and all of the pressure that was coming at it. And then he talks about the second person who built their house on the rock, the person who built the house on what it was supposed to be built upon. And so the rains came, nothing happened. The winds blew, nothing happened. The storms came, and the house stood because his house was built upon the rock. And what Jesus is saying, I am the rock. And so this morning, I want to help you build a foundation in this series called Being Rich in What Matters Most. Because in 2020, how many of you want 2020 to be different than 2019? Raise your hand. Absolutely. And so what we want to do is help you build into your life a way to be rich in what matters most. So you're building a life built on the rock instead of building a life built on sand. And so last week, just a quick recap, we talked about good news and we talked about bad news. What's the good news? We are rich. The good news is we are rich. When we compare ourselves to the rest of the world, we talked about some stats that Gallup research came out with, and we said that if you make $33,000 a year, okay, you're in the top 1% of wage earners in the world. If you make $33,000, you are in the top 1%. To go a step further, we said that if you make $80,000 a year, combined income of $80,000 a year, you are in the top 0.1% of 1% in the world. That means that you're in the top, I'm not good at math, that means that you're in the top 1/10 of 1% in the world. That is rich. When we don't compare ourselves to other people in America, when we look at people outside of our world and look at the entire world, we are rich. And so we tried to lay a foundation on this idea that we are all rich. And so that was the good news. That's what the good news was. What was the bad news? The bad news is we are rich. The good news is that we are rich, and the bad news is that we are rich. It's bad news because it puts us at a spiritual disadvantage. It puts us at a spiritual disadvantage because it makes it harder for us to depend on God. Because we depend on other things, on our social media, on our stuff that we have. We end up depending on that more than we do on God. The second thing we said why it's a disadvantage is because we have rich people opportunities. And it keeps us from engaging in what should be our top priorities, like church and this and that. And so we have rich people opportunities. We can afford to have the summer home and miss church and miss small group and miss this and that. And our kids miss out on small group because we have rich people opportunities. And then lastly, we talked about how we have a greater responsibility. Because we have been given much is expected of us today. And so today, I want to talk to you about what Nick said earlier. We're going to talk about the deceitfulness of riches. the deceitfulness of riches. This is actually something that Jesus talked about in a parable. Jesus shared a parable of a farmer who was going out to sow seed, and many of you may know the story that the farmer, he was sharing this with the Pharisees, he was sharing this with the common people, he was sharing this with his disciples, and he said a farmer went out to sow seed, and some of it fell on a path, and some of it fell on rocky soil, some of it was sown on thorny soil. I practiced that all week just to make sure I said it right. You'll get why I was practicing that later. Anyways, you'll get it on the ride home. Thorny soil, okay? You can laugh, it's fine. I was so scared to be like a YouTube sensation by saying the wrong thing, okay? Anyways. And then some of the soil fell on good soil, okay? And so then his disciples, and like his disciples do a lot of times, they're like, oh yeah, Jesus, this is great. And then they get along with Jesus and like, Jesus, what are you talking about? Like, how many of you have ever like heard a sermon, maybe one of mine, and you're like, what the heck was he talking about? Raise your hand. It's okay. Thank you. In the back, you're very honest. So they're with Jesus, and they're like, Jesus, what are you talking about? Like the sower and like the farmer, what are you talking about? And so Jesus talks about the deceitfulness and riches in Matthew 13:22. So if you have your Bibles, open them up to Matthew 13:22, and then jump over to Matthew 6:24. But go to Matthew 13 first. It says this: Jesus is explaining to his disciples what he meant. Okay, he said the seed falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke out the word, making it unfruitful. Jesus was saying that the deceitfulness of riches of this world can choke out our spiritual growth. We get so worried about being rich and becoming rich and having that security that it actually chokes out the word that is planted inside of us. How many of you, by raising your hands, have ever been to a place, I don't know if I can say the name, but like you've been to a place where they serve pizza, there's a mouse that sings, and it's a kid place, and you get tokens? Chuck E. Cheese, exactly. I wasn't going to say it, but you did, so thank you. So when you go to Chuck E. Cheese, you get these things, right? You get tickets. How many of you have been to Chuck E. Cheese? So where I'm from, we had something called Major Magics, okay? It's kind of like an off-brand, but anyways. So you get tickets, right? And you're like, man, I'm going to work so hard. How many of you have like knocked your kid over because you're going to do the skee ball thing because they're not getting enough tickets? You don't have to raise your hand, but I know you all have done it. And it's like, get out of here, Timmy. I'm going to do this. Let me show you how to whack those moles. Anyways, so we work so hard, and we're like, I'm going to get like 14,000 tickets, you know? And so you're doing the skee ball, you're whacking the moles, you're shooting the baskets, and so you finally get all these tickets, you know, and you go up to the thing, and you're like, here's all my tickets, man. And then here's this like, you know, kid behind the counter, and he goes, hold on, here you go. You're like, I spent 4 hours and knocked my kid out just so I can get this little thing? Like, this, you would think that this would equate to a lot more than that. And you see, when we grow up and we become adults, our tickets change. Our tickets change, but we still believe the same thing. We still think that these type of tickets, I only got one of them because I don't have a lot of these, but we think these tickets, we think this ticket, this green ticket, ooh, I got everybody's attention now. Everybody's like, is he going to give it away? Is he going to give it away? Can you give it to me? You need to work on your deceitfulness of riches. I'm just kidding. But we get these tickets when we grow up, and we're like, this ticket is going to give me so much. It's going to give me power. It's going to give me security. It's going to give me love. It's going to give me everything that I need. We think if we get enough of these tickets, finally, I'll be satisfied. And what Jesus is saying is that you can get all these tickets that you can possibly earn and get, and it's still not enough. You can get all the tickets in the world, and it will never be enough. You see, this ticket right here, this ticket that I'm holding in my hand, over-promises and under-delivers every single time. It will never deliver to you what you and I really need. And so as we talk about the deceitfulness, I'm going to put this back in my pocket. Anyways, I was going to give it away to somebody, but we'll see. As we talk about the deceitfulness of riches, I just want to share with you this key thought. And so if you're taking notes, I want you to write this down. I hope you take notes the whole time, but I want you to write this down. This is so true. The world wants you and I to serve money. The world wants you and I to serve money instead of God. It wants you to do everything that you do in life to serve money and not serve God. Jesus said this in Matthew 6, verse 24. Verse 24, he says this, no one, everybody say no one. No one can serve two masters. Either he'll hate the one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. You cannot serve both God and money. Notice Jesus didn't say you can't serve both God and power. He didn't say that. He didn't say you can't serve both God and popularity. He didn't say you can't serve both God and the devil. What he said was you cannot serve both God and money. Let me ask you this question. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? Why do you think Jesus said you cannot serve both God and money? Well, I would argue is because Jesus knew how attractive money would be to us. Jesus knew how attractive of a false god money would be to us. He knew it. He knew for many of us that we would want to serve money. He knew that money would be the number one competitor for us in our hearts. For so many of us, all we can think about is the things that money can buy us. And Jesus thinks that it will be the number one competitor for our hearts. And so he says you cannot serve both God and money. Let me ask you this question. I want you to write it down. Why is money such an attractive false god? Why is money such an attractive false god? Because money promises what only God can provide. Money promises that which only God can provide. And so what does money promise? Money promises several different things, but we're going to talk about two different things this morning. The first thing is this. Money promises happiness. If I can just get enough tickets, if I can just make my stack of money this much higher, then I'll be happy. If I can just get this, then I'll be happy. I know you said that. I know I have said that. And that's something that money falsely promises. The second thing is this. Money promises security. If I can finally have enough, then I'll finally be secure. If I have enough money, I'll be happy. If I have enough money, I'll be secure. I remember when my wife and I were in our first year of marriage, we were in this tiny apartment, and I remember, I was like, man, if we could just get a house, then everything would be better. And then I remember saying, man, if we could just get a housekeeper, then I would be happy. Man, if we could just get someone to clean our house, right? Like, it's never, ever enough. The reality is, the more that we have, that does not give us lasting joy. Only God can give you and I lasting joy. Only God can provide everlasting joy. You see, we can get more and more and more and still want more and more and more. It's like being stranded out on the sea, and the more salt water you drink, the more you have to have and have to have. It's never going to provide. It's never going to fulfill you. Money does not provide happiness. Happiness only comes through God and His Son, Jesus. That's the only way true happiness comes. Money promises what only God can provide. Now, some of you are sitting there and you're like, man, I would never serve money. You're like, I would never, in a million years, would I ever serve money. Oh, really? Let me give you a few scenarios, if you will, if I could do this ever so gently. If you're here this morning, if you've ever bought something with money you don't have to impress people you don't like, guess what? You're serving money. If you're here and you've ever compromised your integrity, and maybe you've cheated on an expense report, you're serving money. If you're here and you've ever downloaded a movie that wasn't out yet, or watched a movie they didn't rent, I've done that. You're serving money. Or maybe like this. Maybe you're here and you took your family to Disney World and you told your 16-year-old that he's 11 because 12 and under gets in a little bit cheaper, okay? He might shave, but he's 11, okay? He might shave, but he's still 11. You're thinking that more and more and more is going to make you happy, and you are serving money. You are serving money. You're under the illusion that more and more and more is going to make you happy, that it's going to bring you meaning. I want you to write this down. Money is a false god that is promising what only God can provide. Money is a false god. And so in this series, we're talking about how we are rich. So since we are rich, we need to acknowledge that we are rich. And so we want to be people that are good at being rich. And so our key verse, as we've been talking about last week and this week, comes from 1 Timothy 6:17. And Paul is talking to young Timothy, and he's saying, when you talk to rich people, when you are helping rich people, I want you to help them in this way. Help them be good at being rich. And so 1 Timothy 6:17 through 18 says this: command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Command them to do good and to be rich. Command them to be rich in good deeds and to be generous and willing to share. And so last week, if you were here, our key statement was this: God has blessed me with more than I need. I am rich. That was the key statement that we said last week, that God has blessed me with more than I need. I am rich. And so this week we're going to add on to this statement a little bit. And so I want you to write this down. We're going to say it together, but let me say it first. It's this: I will not trust in riches, but in him who richly provides. Let's say that together. I will not trust in riches, but in him who richly provides. Let's do it one more time. I will not trust in riches, but in him who richly provides. The problem is that money is always screaming at us, you need me. You need me. If you have more of me, you'll be happy. If you have more of me, more of me, more of me, then you'll be happy. And then you'll feel significant. And so what I want to do is hopefully in the next couple, last week and this week and the next week, hopefully drive these thoughts home and they'll get into your heart so you'll know that Jesus is what you need. Not more money, but more of Jesus. And so there's three problems for those of us who trust and love money. And so over the next couple moments, I hope that you'll relax with me. I hope you'll drop your guard with me and just kind of engage in the scripture and allow God to teach us what he would have for us to learn this morning. So the first thing for those of us who love and trust in money is this, if you're taking notes. People who love and trust money never have enough. People who love and trust money never have enough. They never have enough. If I asked you if you're satisfied with your income, a lot of us would say, no. No, I am not. If I said, are you satisfied with everything you have? A lot of us would say, no, I kind of want more. I kind of need more. Then I'll finally be happy. And I just wonder if that could be an indication that we are under the power of the love of money. Solomon, the wisest man ever, wrote in Ecclesiastes 5:10, he said this. He said, whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This too is meaningless. This too is meaningless. If we are always wanting more, I can promise you, it doesn't matter how big the stack of money you have gets. It's never, ever going to be enough. You're always going to want more. You're always going to want more. If I were to ask you, how much money do you need to be happy? Like, how big of a stack do you need to have to be secure or to finally feel happy? The answer is always going to be just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. You could get more. You could say that you get double what you make now, and I promise you, when you get that double, a year from there, you'll say, I just need a little bit more. Money is a false god that promises false security and false happiness. It's always saying that you need more. I promise you, there's some of you in this room right now, you know this is true, because right now you're making way more than you did 10 years ago, and you still feel strapped. you still feel like you're not making enough. That is the deceitfulness of riches. Always saying, I need more, then I'll be happy. Money overpromises and underdelivers every single time. It can never deliver what only God can deliver. Proverbs 18:11 says this. The wealth of the rich is their fortified city. They imagine it's a wall too high to scale. If we think if I can just get enough money, I can just buy away the bad things. If I just get enough money, the bad things are not going to happen to me. Money promises something that it cannot provide. The second thing is this. The second thing I want you to write down is this. People who love and trust money, number one, never have enough. And number two, they find it increasingly difficult to give big. Now, I know a lot of you like tense, okay? Like, don't tense in this moment. I'm not standing up here begging for you to give more to the church, okay? If you don't want to give here, don't give here. All the others are looking at me like, don't say that. Seriously, I'm not trying to guilt trip you into all that, okay? But I need you to lean in with me, okay? I want you to not just shut your ears off when you hear about giving. I want you to lean in, okay? But for those of us who are under the power of money, we find it increasingly difficult to give big. Because, and here's the thing, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there's a lot of people in this room who would love to tithe, who would love to, you believe in the mission of this church, you believe in being for Fayette, you believe in the things that we're doing and the new families that are here and the children's ministry that's growing and the student ministry that's growing. Like there's a lot of you here that would love to give to this church, but you just feel like you're not at a place to yet tithe because you still got credit card debt, you still got this, and so you're saying, I just don't have enough, I can't give. I know there's people in here right now. You would love to help someone in need. Like you would love to help someone. Like when you go out to dinner, you would love to be able to bless someone with a huge tip. But you're just saying, I just don't have enough. My stack is not big enough yet. You think I just can't afford it because I don't have enough money. You know what's crazy is that it's been proven over and over and over again in studies that the wealthier people are, on average, the smaller percentage that they give. The more money that people have, the smaller the percentage is. Do you know who gives the largest percentage on average in our country? This is going to shock you. Those who give the most, percentage-wise, are those who make below $12,000 a year. That's the people who give the most in our country. Those who make the least give the highest percentage. And of course, there's exceptions. There's always going to be exceptions. But on average, those who make the least give the most. And those who make the most give the least. That is not a way to be rich, to be good at being rich. That is not a way to honor God with what God has given us. When we look at Jesus, Jesus evidently didn't care about the amounts that people gave. He looked at their hearts and he looked at the percentage that they gave. There's this time where Jesus is near the temple. He's in the temple, and he was watching all these Pharisees, these religious people who were giving into this like treasury thing, and they were giving out of their wealth. They were giving a small percentage and just giving a little bit. And Jesus watched them, and then Jesus watched this poor old widow go up, and she took out 2 measly pennies, and she tossed them in there. And that got Jesus' attention. This widow passed out 2 pennies, 2 mites, and it caught Jesus' attention. He says, look at this woman right here. He goes to all of his disciples and says, stop what you're doing, stop talking, look at this woman right here. All these other people have been giving out of their wealth, giving a small percentage of it, giving out of their wealth, and she gave everything she had. God didn't care. Jesus didn't care about the amount. He cared about the heart and her percentage. He knew that she gave everything she had. She gave out of the goodness of her heart. The Bible says that God loves a cheerful giver. So maybe you're here and you're like, how does she do that? How could someone give when they don't have any stack of money at all? They don't have any stack. The reason is that she was not trusting in her money. She was trusting in him who richly provides. She was trusting in God. In fact, Paul goes on to talk about to the church in Corinth. He talks about this group of people in the Macedonian churches. It's an amazing, amazing story of this group of Christians in Macedonia. And he talks about it in 2 Corinthians 8, 2 through 3. I want you to follow along with me. It says, when he's talking about the Macedonian church, he says, in the midst of a very severe trial, their overflowing joy and their extreme poverty welled up in rich generosity. Pause. Go back real quick, please. Go back real quick. It says that their extreme poverty welled up in rich generosity. Their extreme poverty, okay? When you think about extreme poverty, picture what comes in your head. Go on. Go ahead. Thanks. For I testify that they gave as much as they were able and even beyond their ability entirely on their own. He says that they gave out of their extreme poverty. They had joy, and they gave and gave and gave because they did not trust in their riches. They trusted in Him who richly provides. And so they gave big. And the reality is the more that we have, the harder it is for us to give big because we want to trust in our wealth. I want to tell you two stories real quickly that changed my life. One happened in 2010 when I graduated college, and one happened this year. So let me tell you about the one in 2010. In 2010, there was a young married couple that kind of took me under their wing, kind of took me into their household. I think they were like 26, 27, just married, just getting started, did not have wealth, did not have, extreme wealth or lavish things, but they saw what I was doing. I was working for this church, basically full-time, but getting paid less than quarter time, and they called me their Michael Orr. Have you guys ever seen The Blind Side? Everybody's like, hey, you're their Michael Orr. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not going to get a pro football contract and be a left tackle, so they kind of lost out on that. And so that was kind of me. Like, they kind of took me everywhere and took me under their wing. And, I had parents, but they were kind of out of the picture. I have parents, and they were kind of out of the picture at the time. And their names are Sarah and Andrew. And I remember texting him this morning, I'm going to talk about him. He's like, oh, boy. And I would not be where I'm at today if it wasn't for Andrew and Sarah. Like, after church, hey, Adam, why don't you come over? Why don't you have dinner with us? There'd be times where I'd find like a $20 bill stuck in my jacket or something like that. There's times where Andrew would follow me to the gas station. He'd fill up my gas tank because it was an hour to school, an hour back to the church. He would just kind of do those things. And I remember when I graduated college, I had like nothing. Like, you think nothing, like nothing. Like, not really sure where I was going to live, what I was going to do, and I was just like strapped. And I did have a speaking engagement that was going to happen in like July, and I was like, man, Lord, I need a certain amount of money just to get to July, and that speaking engagement will kind of pay for it until I get to XYZ. And I remember they came to my college graduation, and my parents were there too, and I didn't get any gifts for graduation. I'm in college graduate, it's fine, it's whatever. And I remember afterwards, they waited till everybody was gone, and they gave me this envelope, and in this envelope was $500, which was exactly what I needed to get to the speaking gig so I can make it through. Now, let me just say, like, Andrew and Sarah did not have a lot of money. Like, they were not wealthy people, but they were very good at being rich in good deeds. Like, they knew what it meant that it's more blessed to give than to receive. Like, they did not trust in their riches. They trusted in Him who richly provided. I'm promising you right now, I would not be where I'm at today if it wasn't for them giving out of the goodness, out of the generosity of their hearts. Second story. I'm not going to cry through this one. I promise I was not going to cry this week. I cried last week a little bit. So, as you all know, we did a building camp. A lot of you may know if you've been here a while. But we did a building campaign. I won't get into all that, but we did a building campaign to kind of help with roof repairs and parking lot and our budget, blah, blah, blah. And I remember I kind of had a little bit of a crappy attitude about it, if I'm being honest, okay? I remember talking with my wife. Can I be honest for a second? Is that okay? Can I be real? Can I just share my heart with you for a second? Okay, let me pour it out for a second. So I remember talking to my wife. I'm like, man, we have a percentage that we give, and I was asking everybody else, I'm like, we need to give above and beyond what we normally give. And my wife and I decided on a number that we were going to give above and beyond to this capital campaign because we believe that this is what God has called us to do. But I honestly, at first, was like, not super happy about it, okay? Because I'm like, man, we're already giving this. Like, these people, and I remember, and I won't say his name because all of you know him, but I won't say his name, but we had a guy from one of our special needs class that came up to me after I made the first announcement that we're having a capital campaign and we have some needs in the church, and he met me in my office and he said, hey, Adam, how much do you need? I'm like, hey, man, don't worry about it. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. He goes, no, I want to give you something. How much do you need? I said, I don't know, man, why don't you talk to your mom? And, kind of left it at that, like, don't worry about giving, it's fine. So I remember the next week, he came to my office, and he was beaming with joy, just smiling ear to ear, and he said, Adam, I have something for you, for the church, for the campaign. And I opened it up, and it was an amount that was a big amount to a lot of us here. And I was like, man, we can't take this. He goes, no, I want you to have it. And God whipped me in the face with a 2x4. He said, this guy is giving out of the generosity of his heart. He says he knows what it means to give with joy, how to give out of the riches of his heart. Adam, you need to do the same thing. And in that moment, I was like, Lord, I'm all in. I remember giving him a big hug, and I was trying to not cry before I came up here and spoke. But guys, that's what it looks like to give out of the generosity of your heart. That's what it looks like to not put your trust in riches. That's what it looks like to not have your hope in money. I'm not up here trying to have you give more to the church. I'm trying to stand up here and trying to convince you that money is not going to ultimately give you happiness. I'm trying to help you build a life on a foundation that is on Jesus rather than money, because Jesus says you can't serve both God and money. This is not a guilt trip. This is not a guilt trip. This is a truth, trying to tell you the truth that money is not the ultimate source of happiness. We all have to see ourselves as being rich, A lot of us will say, I can't give now. I can't give because I got credit card debt. I got student debt. I got this, and I'll give later. But how about this? How about we start giving now? What if we say, I'm going to start giving now? I've been blessed by God. I'm going to start giving now. The third thing is this. I want you to write this down. You may have money in the bank. But you do not have peace in your heart. You may have money in the bank, but you don't have peace in your heart. And you'll say, well, technically, Adam, I don't have a lot of money in the bank. Yeah, but you got a lot of toys in the room. You got a lot of clothes in the closet. You got a lot of food in the pantry. Like, you're doing okay. The Proverbs says this. Proverbs 15:16 says this. Better a little with the fear of the Lord than great wealth or turmoil. Better a little with a lot of God than a lot with no God. You see, a lot of people just don't believe that. I read a story this week about a pastor who was interviewing a guy who manages, talking to a guy who manages people who have great wealth. This guy manages people who are billionaires, billionaires with the B, okay? Billionaires. They have a lot of money. He said, you work with people with great wealth. Is that always a blessing? Is it always great, or is it a curse? And he said, man, you don't understand the challenges that these people are under. He said that it's almost impossible to do it right. And the pastor asked him, if you could have that kind of wealth, the guy who manages the money, if you could have that kind of wealth, would you do it? And the guy said, not in a million years. Not in a million years would I ever want that kind of wealth. And now I know what some of you are thinking, okay? Why don't you give me a shot at it, okay? Why don't you give me a shot at it, and let's see if we can get this thing worked out. I think I could be a pretty good billionaire. But see, you may not be a billionaire, you may not be a millionaire, but we are all still rich. And if we continue to put our hope in money, it will let us down every single time. And so, in fact, let me just say this as lovingly as I can. Some of you are here this morning and you make more money than your parents ever dreamed of, and you still feel like you're strapped. You still feel like you don't have enough. Could it be that everything that God gives you, you continue to consume like it's for you? Everything that God gives you, you consume, and so instead of living on little, instead of living below your means, you're trying to live above your means. And so the bottom line is this: if we honestly believe that more money will solve most of our problems, we are under the influence of money. Because money will not solve our problems. Money will not solve our problems. Because more money will not solve most of our problems. Like the great artist, the notorious B.I.G. said, "Mo money, mo problems." Mo money, mo problems. But what will solve most of your problems is Jesus. What will solve most of your problems is faith in Jesus Christ, is knowing that He loves you, that He cares for you, that He will provide. More Jesus will solve your problems, because get this, the reality is more money is not going to keep your kids off drugs. The reality is the more money is not going to make your marriage better. If you didn't love each other before you had money, when you get money, all you're going to do is fight about money. More money is not going to make your marriage better. More money is not going to cure the person that you love of cancer. More money is not going to keep the person that you love from getting leukemia. Jesus is the answer. More of Jesus is what we need. Jesus brings intimacy. He brings healing. He brings focus. He brings power. He brings purpose. He brings the divine into our world. What we need is more Jesus, more Jesus, more Jesus, more Jesus. So instead of saying, "I want more money," start saying, in 2020, I'm going to build my life on the foundation of the rock of Jesus Christ. I do not need more money. I'm not going to put my hope in money. I'm not going to put my trust in money, but I'm going to put my hope, I'm going to put my trust in Jesus. Amen. That's what. Can I get some help this morning? Come on. Say, "I want more Jesus in my life. I want more Jesus in my life."